Stand by, I got a feeling I'm falling for nobody else but you. Falling for nobody else but you. I love the way you're breaking my heart. It's terribly, 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 terribly thrilling. I love the way you're breaking my heart. Although you're gonna ruin it, it's heaven while you're doing it. I love the way I feel when we kiss. You're terribly, terribly, terribly irresistible. Tonight with me, delight in me. You really know how. It's gonna hurt tomorrow, but it feels so good now. So darling, just keep playing your part, 'cause I love.
Good morning. My name is Susan Reardon. I'm the staff hearing officer, and I call the meeting of Wednesday, February 15th to order. Today we have 3 items on our agenda, and I haven't received any requests for continuances or postponements, so we will hear them in the order that they appear on the agenda. Under announcements and appeals, I have no announcements, and we have no recent appeals. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to address the staff hearing officer on items not on today's agenda? No, seeing no one, we'll go to the first item, which is 2 Rosemary Lane, if the applicant would like to come up. Good morning.
The owner regrets that they couldn't make it for health reasons today.
That's fine, as long as you can represent them, that's fine. And
I can. My name is Bart Millar.
Okay, we'll start first, let Ms. Teeter do a staff presentation, and then you can follow up with any additional comments you may have. We're a little different than the design board. We let the staff go first and then have the applicant go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, so the house is a single-family residence, 2-story, on about 8,700 square feet lot. And the proposal today is to allow, to construct an elevator at the rear of the house. And in order to accomplish that, the applicant is requesting 3 modifications. One is a modification to allow a reduction in the required minimum 20 by 20 dimension for the open yard area. You can see it's a little over 17 feet with the addition of the elevator. However, the property will still maintain the required square footage for open yard. It's over 1250, 1332. So they do meet the basic requirements. It's just the dimensions that will be slightly smaller than what is required. To give you a little background, normally this is 58 square feet. That would not trigger the requirement for an additional parking space. However, in 1998, a permit was issued for a major remodel in addition to the house, second-story addition. And at that time, it should have triggered the need for a second parking space. It did not. It got missed. And so now we're requiring that the site be brought up to meet current parking requirements. There is no location on site other than in the front yard to place a covered parking space. Our urban historian has looked at the site. As you know, it's considered historic and does not want parking in the front yard. So transportation planning has reviewed the proposed location, which is going to be an uncovered parking space in the driveway. In order to secure this parking space, 2 modifications are required. One is for a front setback modification and one is an interior setback modification. However, it's the general consensus that this is the preferred alternative for the additional parking. It will be behind an existing gate, and we feel that it's supportable because it will have minimum impact to neighbors or visual openness of the street. Part of there'll be a condition of approval that the trash enclosure be removed. It's in the setback, and the trellis that's attached to the existing garage, which is in the setback, will be removed. And that several items that were also identified in the previous CIR. The gate is electric, so they need to get a permit for the electric gate and a permit. They move the laundry into the kitchen without a permit. So other than that, staff does support the modification request.
Okay, great, thank you. You've already stated your name for the record. Did you want to provide additional comments?
No, only that the owner is handicapped, and I understand there are some provisions made to allow for that allow you to make findings in his favor, given that. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. I would like to comment on the quality of your photos. This is a really good photo documentation and kind of explaining what is there. This would be great if a lot of people did it this way, so I just wanted to compliment you on that.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was
good advertising.
Okay, so I'd like to open the public hearing. Is there anyone here who would like to address the staff hearing officer on 2 Rosemary Lane? No, seeing no one. Have we received any letters or emails on this one?
I have not.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site, even though your photos were really well, and walked around the site and looked at it. And it is significantly constrained given the existing development on the site. And so in terms of providing an additional parking space and the historic character of the property, it really is the only place to provide it on the driveway as an uncovered parking space. So the modification to allow it to remain there, it's an appropriate, it allows for an appropriate improvement. It'll meet the code requirement, and also is hidden from the public view because of the gate. And in terms of the elevator in the rear yard, that also it makes the most sense on your property if that's where it's needed to get up to the second floor to the bedroom area. You can't put it anywhere else. And in regards to the open yard area, there is an existing pool in the front yard, and there was a table and an on-grade deck in this area, but this is also a usable area for open yard area. So although you don't meet the minimum dimension, there is other areas on your site that meets that, the provision in the code. It's an alternative area. So in regards to your request for the open yard modification, it is a supportable modification, and it would allow for an appropriate improvement. And like you said, we do have special considerations for making existing development accessible to people with disabilities, and so that's another reason why. So I can make the findings in the staff report. I just want to add just a little sentence regarding the fact that there is open yard in the front yard. Just that it provides alternative areas, so there will be a minor change in your findings. But other than that, I can make the findings, outline the staff report, and it'd be subject to the condition, as Betsy said, that the violations identified in your previous CIR be abated, which you've shown on the plans. So my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if either of those would occur, Betsy would contact you. Okay?
Okay. Is that it?
You're done.
Thank you very much.
There you go. The next item is 1257 Farello Road, if the applicant would like to come up. Good morning. We did receive a letter this morning. I'll give you a copy. Or does Kathy, do you have an extra copy? Huh? No. take that one then. I just gave you mine.
These are the other two here.
Those are ones, okay.
Those are for those.
Okay, great. Anytime you're ready, Betsy.
Okay. So the property is located at 1257 Farello. It's approximately 7,200 square feet with a two-story, 2,300 square foot single-family dwelling with a basement storage area below. So the applicant is requesting 2 interior setback modifications to allow for some as-built work on the property. The current owners bought the property with the knowledge that the previous owners had expanded the deck. There was a permitted deck at the rear that has been expanded into the required interior setback. They also, a solarium was added, which is now used as habitable space, and a portion of that also encroaches into the required interior setback. There's also a request for an encroachment of stairs that were added on the first floor deck, and there'll be a new landing as part of the stairs, and this encroaches into the required 10-foot interior setback. The Single-Family Design Board has reviewed the project and did support the requested modifications for the encroachment into the westerly and the easterly setbacks. However, they are requiring that the second floor deck and spiral staircase must be removed, so that is a condition of approval. Staff generally supports the modifications. We believe that they've been there for approximately 15 years, that they are fairly well screened, that they should have minimal impact to the adjacent property owners. As part of our condition of approval for other items that were identified in a previous ZIR will either be permitted or removed. They're going to be removed, for instance, the laundry shed, and there's some utility work in there. It's a water feature, yeah, that will have to be permitted. But we believe that the locations of the improvements, although they are as-built, that they will have minimal visibility impacts to the neighbors. Certainly, they're not visible from the street. So for that reason, we do support the modification requests.
Okay, so I'd like to clarify that in terms of my review today, what I'm looking at is the requested interior setback modifications, not the second floor deck, whether it's appropriate or not. That's under design review purview. Right. And so it's the portion of the solarium within the setback and the portion of the upper level deck that is in the setback, and then the stairways.
Exactly.
Okay, great, thanks. Would you like to state your name for the record and provide additional comments?
Yes, Fred Sweeney, representing Doug and Joy Mascart. And just to be clear, Betsy called me yesterday and said, Fred, do you have an aerial photograph? And I'll introduce these documents
Yeah, I printed one too.
into the record. Oops, I'm going to turn them this way. So this is the subject house. These are the two houses on each side. As you can see, this house is canted away from the edge of this house, and the area that we're talking about is right here, and the staircase that lands on the ground is right here. That's a little more clear maybe in this photograph, the same thing. So the area we're talking about is right here and right here in terms of the documentation. With regards to here, we're within a few inches one way or the other of the setback. This is the setback here. You can see that the existing deck is well beyond as the staircase, the bulk of the staircase is well beyond here. And then this area is the solarium here and the deck here. And I think we did supply information as to the extent of the financial penalty that would endure if we weren't allowed to leave this in place. And also, let's see, I want to See if I can pull out here very quickly. Thought I had it right here. This is a photograph standing on the upper deck looking back at this house over here. That's this house. You can see
Again-
that deck will come down. So
Right, yes,
so that's just a view shed.
Do you have views from the upper level, the lower floor?
Yes, and that's
deck?
what I was looking
Yeah.
for. A lot of photographs.
This one here was submitted with the
Yes.
application.
And then
Do you have
this
it?
is looking the other way to the Kruger residence.
So this is from the upper level one or
No,
from
this
the
is
lower?
from the lower level. And can't find, I think that's the one I was looking
That's
for.
fine. This looks like
Yeah, I
it's
think that's what it is. Yeah,
represents-
that's from the lower level. That's basically standing right on this edge right here, looking
Mm-hmm.
that way. And there are no windows here.
Mm-hmm.
And this house was built in 1961, I believe. This house originally was built in the 20s as a single story and then was added to on the second floor at some point after that. So when this house was built, they made a conscientious effort to put no windows on this side. So as staff has pointed out, it's very difficult to see this extension from either the street, even down below in the house below, from here, and certainly can't be seen from this side.
Okay.
And I think that's basically it.
Okay, great, thank you. I do have some questions, but I'll open the public hearing first so that if the additional comments come up from that, I can ask them. I just have one request to speak. If there's anybody else who would like to speak on this item, if you could fill out a form and give it to Kathy. But the one I have is from Emma Brinkman. If you'd like to come up and you can sit on the chair. Kathy, are these Fred's copies? Yes. Okay, here's.
Thank you.
And I didn't turn on that mic, but if you just push the little button, you'll see that.
This button here?
Yeah, there in the green light, yeah, great. I already stated your name.
So I don't need to state my name?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say it anyways. Emma Brinkman.
That's fine.
I practiced this. And I reside at 1261 Farella Road, which is the property directly west of 1257. My main concern is regarding the west side. There was a deck extension built in 2014 that was unpermitted by the previous owner. That would be Martha Dingillian, who sold their home to the Mass Guards. I don't know how to make that happen from there. But according to our survey, and this is our copy of our survey that was done in 2013, it shows that the deck is in the interior setback, the west interior setback, by 6 inches.
And where is that on? That's on this right here?
Yeah, and it's...
So it's not showing
It's
on-
not really showing.
on the plan.
And I did not see on the plans any evidence of a survey that Mr. Sweeney used for his calculations. So that is a concern of ours. What happened is Ms. Dingillian was a very happy builder back in her day and did a lot of building, and there was a previous violation, notice of violation. She did a lot of extensive decking on the west side, and most of it encroached on the paseo, which is between our properties, a 6-foot paseo. And she built an accessory on our property. So I tried to ask her to remove that accessory structure. She refused. So I filed a complaint with the building department, and notice of violation ensued. So this is the deck that was next to the carport that was removed. And then there was I'm looking at this upside down. Let me grab my glasses too.
Well, we're just focusing on.
Right, but I'm
that's
trying to establish
past-
why there is a problem with this west side.
Okay.
Okay, and So this is the abatement. We'll just move on then.
Yeah.
And as you can see, this deck was starting, this is the old deck that supported the hot tub,
There you go.
the old deck right here.
That works.
And then this is the new deck that's unpermitted. So before this was even abated, before this was even signed off, Ms. Dingillian started building again. So this is a new structure, new construction without a permit. So there's where I think the encroachment comes in. And what we're requesting, I mean, the deck is there, is screening from the deck because the southwest corner of that deck is elevated to almost 8 feet. And that, with the encroachment into the interior setback, is a loss of privacy for us. So what we're hoping to do is have you consider, we do understand that the city has a good neighbor policy, and we're hoping to have some screening. This is how I view the deck from the middle of my backyard, the lower deck. So I do have a direct view of that deck. And as Mr. Sweeney pointed out, this is the neighbors to the east has provided screening for the mascots. And the neighbors to the west of me have provided screening for their neighbors on their deck, which is not in a setback. So I'm hoping that the city will provide, or ask, we are asking for some screening so we can maintain a bit of privacy.
Okay, great, thank you.
And that's that. Do you want to keep the pictures?
Yeah, we need to
Okay.
keep them. And yeah, anything presented at the public hearing needs to be kept as part of the record.
Okay.
So is there anybody else who would like to address the staff hearing officer on this project? Seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. We did receive 3 letters. One was from Ms. Brinkman, and then another one we received this morning was from Stephanie Morat, and she, the comments are mainly on the second-story deck, and that's not in my purview today. She was concerned with the, oh wait, never mind. Yeah, she wasn't concerned. She was supportive of the second-story deck, and she's supportive of the other elements of the project. Sorry. And then another letter we got from Mrs. Edmonds, and she had no comments regarding the project, but she was hoping that the city would condition the project regarding the paint color and require the existing carport to be converted into a garage to hide the stuff stored in there. And both, again, those are outside of my purview, so I won't be able to address those. So I'll close the public hearing. So then, yeah, okay, now I have questions. In response to Emma, if the deck does encroach into the setback, it's not part of this project, so it would be a violation and it would need to go through the abatement process. So as part of the permitting process, the deck, this outline of the deck would be verified. And if it was seen to encroach into the setback, it would have to be either cut back to outside of the setback or go through the process again, because what the modification is for the stairways and for this portion over here. In regards to my comments, when I was reading the staff report and the SFDP minutes, I was really surprised that they said that the minutes say they support the modification. And I know what they're supposed to focus on is the consistencies with their guidelines, not necessarily support or not of a particular modification. It's the project as a whole. So I actually watched the hearing, and the whole hearing focused on the second-story deck. And then at the end, it was just kind of throwing, well, if you remove the second-story deck, I guess we can support this, although it's within 15 feet. And so I don't know that this portion of the deck was really discussed at the design board. And when I look at the good neighbor policies, it seems to go against all of them. So I wanted to have you respond on how this portion of the deck, that's 5 feet from the property, and then the reason why I wanted the outline of the adjacent buildings on this plan is, 1, it's a submittal requirement, and 2, so I can see how far it is. So when I took my measurements, it's only 13 feet to the neighbor property. And so if this talks about setback upper story decks at least 15 feet from interior property lines when possible, well, it could be here or it could go here. Screening, it seems like what Emma had testified, that screening has been put up, so this deck does impact the neighbor because they've put a hedge on their property that grows. And then when we look at the photo where it says, locate second-story balconies and decks to avoid direct sight lines from the deck or balcony to neighbors' windows, open yard, patio, decks, and other areas. So this looks right over their open yard area. So I'm wondering how it is consistent with these good neighbor policies.
Okay, let me see if I can address a few things. First of all, as I said, the adjacent house was built in 1961. This house was already in existence. So Ken Kruger, who's the architect that lived there and designed the house, I think took into account that that was the existing condition. So when we're dealing with a review of the 15-foot guideline, and it is a guideline, not a requirement, that when we're dealing with something that's being proposed as new or replacement, then certainly I think the Single Family Design Board has the opportunity to make that call using the guideline. And if you look back at the discussions the board has had on several occasions where that has occurred, they have required the applicant to deal with 15 feet.
It seems consistent. A lot of ones I say, they're really strict on the 15-foot.
Exactly. Now, however, we have a condition that's been in play for many, many years.
Not legal.
Okay, and I understand that. And so one of the issues that we have is we have a whole Riviera that was overlaid with a new zoning requirement in 1975 that changed all of the setbacks. And so, as you can appreciate, just by viewing the existing house, it was there in 1924, even though it was modified at a point when the second floor was putting in here in I'm reading upside down, 1981, where these little eyebrows were put on the side of the house. But essentially, the house was already well within the setback. So even in 1981, it's interesting that the approval process at that time didn't require the applicant on the second floor addition to move it back to the 10-foot, because remember that was put in 1975, it's my understanding. So somebody made a decision that it was okay to leave it aligned with the original house. So given that inconsistency, so to speak, with the approvals, you then have in play a deck and a solarium that got put in at some point in between all of that that's inconsistent continually with the 1975 imposed setbacks. And so it's our position that this is a condition that's been there for a very long time. Up until now, there has been no disconcertion from the neighbors about whether they see it or they don't see it. I took the time and the opportunity to have a lot of photographs, and photographs were submitted to be able to see what you can see from Lower Farillo Road, from even down in the...
Watch the design board, so I saw all those
So you
pictures.
saw the effort I went through to try to figure out, does this really have a visual impact on the immediate neighbors and on the neighborhood as a whole? And my contention is it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Now, that probably can't be said about the second floor deck, and you saw that a bulk of the conversation in the review board was about the second floor, and the Mascarts have agreed to take that down. So I think that's the point of impact. I think that the visual impact on this small piece is insignificant in the fact that in the entire Riviera we probably have lots of these conditions. And the only reason this has really been brought to the forefront is we have a neighbor to the west who is in conflict not only with the current owners here, she's also in conflict with the owners down there. They apparently have brought in a mediator to mediate between her and the owners in this property down here because of hedge heights or trees or something. You'll also notice that this owner planted a new hedge here in the Paseo, which is my understanding is supposed to be clear. And that hedge is now, if you go out and measure it, it's growing above 8 feet. So in terms of comment about what they can see or can't see from their balcony or their backyard, that hedge will get to above 8 feet, and it's my understanding of the hedge ordinance that that can get to 12 feet under administrative review. So I think in the long term, visual impact from this side is insignificant as it is here, as it is from down there. So to require the mascots who are now are facing a substantial amount of cost to pay for permitting for things that weren't built without permits, and to tear down a significant element of their back of their house. And then on top of that, if you were to rule against them, they'd have to tear this down and the solarium, is a huge burden on a buyer who is now being penalized for a whole series of owners and prior owners that have built things without permits. And so the mascots are simply trying to get back to square one so that everything is permitted, is paid for, et cetera. So I don't know that this has a significant impact. And yes, in the strictest sense, in terms of the guidelines, I may agree with you that it doesn't meet some of the things in those guidelines, but I think that this is one of the cases and circumstances where you have an existing condition that's been there better than 20 years, probably 30 years, and are we going to make all of our citizens on the Riviera where these conditions occur try to bring all these buildings back within a superimposed zoning change that occurred in 1975? Are we going to make all of those folks bring these things all back into the strictest accordance of the zoning law? And I think that's an undue burden on many of the owners, including my clients, on the Riviera. This is a case that I have been making to staff and others that our zoning codes don't recognize the existing conditions that we're living with in a city that's filled with steep slopes, with properties that are under normal circumstances in most cities would be unbuildable. So I think this is a case that we should deal with. With regards to the survey information that was just presented, I'm not sure that's correct. If Ms. Brinkman is forcing the mascots to go out and do their own survey at another cost, certainly that can be done, but I think we'll easily demonstrate that this deck does not impede on the 10-foot setback. It certainly does here. I've physically gone off and measured it myself.
Do you have a photo, actually?
down there?
Yeah,
Yes.
of the end of the stairway in relation to
Yeah,
this.
it's in the documents, I believe, under the photographs.
Oh, so you have to open it, or is it in these, all the ones you
I
submitted?
think it's in here, and I also probably have it in here in larger form.
Yeah, just your name. Thanks, Betsy.
Let's see. If you go back and look at what I'm looking for, and again, I'm looking at this upside down, so
I don't see
it.
anything.
Not there. Go to
There's
the,
that's the opposite side, the laundry room's
That's
opposite
right.
side.
go to the other. Oops, do we have another page?
Rear yard from first floor deck. What is it? No, I think it's just that page, and then these little ones that one, or these ones.
Yeah, let's go.
Well, this looks, can you go
There
back
is-
to the site plan?
There is a photo, because I've seen it.
Echo with this one, actually, here's a little bit. So landing, here's the landing, here's the landing. Here's some stairs going down.
Oops, here's
Yeah, you can't see what's under here. That's okay. That's something that will be verified during the plan check process. And if it is shown in the, if it is, it's in the setback, you're aware of what you need to do, either reduce it back to 6 inches or get a mod.
It
Okay.
isn't. We just will have to now go through the exercise of hiring a surveyor to.
We'll
verify.
measure it. You work with staff on what
Right.
a acceptable way to verify what the,
Right, yeah.
what it
We
is.
can certainly do
There
that.
might be a record of survey on file
We
surveyor's
have
office.
looked, I've got a whole set of drawings
Mm-hmm.
of things that were submitted over the years. They're pretty pretty iffy as
Okay.
they went back in time. But we certainly can do that. But I think one could see that this is considerably, I've taken that measurement from this corner to here. And so I'm fairly confident that this drawing is within 6 inches of being accurate.
Okay, all right, all right. Well, then, yeah, we'll work that out.
Okay.
But in regards to your comment regarding that it's been there a long time, 15 years, there's never been an issue with it, I think that illustrates the point that when people move in and stuff, they think it's an existing situation, they think it's permitted that way. And then once they find out that it wasn't permitted that way, they thought, oh, wow, I never liked that deck looking over. And so to me, that's not a justification for approving a modification, is that it's been there a long time. Because people live with their surroundings. And
Right.
when they're new to the neighborhood, they weren't there during the construction. They just think, oh, that's the way it is. I'll just deal with it. I'll plant the hedges. I'll do this. So that's not really an argument that I look towards. In the sense that we do have neighbors that have concerns with it. So I can't take that. If the neighbors got notice and they didn't have concerns with this, it's like, well, actually it doesn't then impact the neighborhood. In regards to your comments regarding the views, in regards to front setback modifications, as you know, we deal with public views, not private views. So
Right.
when it's a front setback modification, I really look at the neighborhood, the setting, what changes does their front setback modification request cause, does it cause impacts? When it's an interior setback, it's the interplay between the two properties. It's not views from below or anything. So what I look at is what the interplays to the two properties are. And this instance, when I said it was so close and it's overlooking the neighbor's open yard area, so if they're out there playing, someone's sitting here, they can see it. So for my purposes and what I look at in zoning, not in design review, but in zoning, it's what's the potential adverse effects, is there any on the neighbors? And I thought I saw somewhere that the Krugers were okay with it. I don't
Yes, they
remember.
were, yeah. And so one of the
Oh, I guess
points.
it was the SFDB. Well, let me finish, Fred. An email in support from Patricia Kruger was acknowledged and read into the record. And that's great that they have good relationships with that neighbor, but they can move.
Yeah,
It's
there would be
interplaying.
a different owner. But my question would be, if someone's standing here and someone is standing here, and you're looking at the backyard over, you're standing in this backyard, what's the difference between someone standing here and someone standing there?
Okay, and what's
If
the
this is
difference?
gone,
Okay, and then
if
what's
this
the
is
difference
gone.
if someone's standing here, if the deck all the way went here? So we should let decks go all the way to the property line with that argument?
No.
The difference is that we have these standards, that everyone, it's applied neighborhood-wide. And so we have these standards that you need to comply with. And we
understand that.
also have the modification process to deal with this type of situation. It's the Riviera, it's our downzoning, it's when, we had all these unintended consequences for changes of our zoning ordinance.
Correct.
And then, with your comment regarding our existing code doesn't really look at the situation, I know you're aware of the ENZO process, and I hope you are participating with it and providing comments.
I am.
Because I have a lot of people come here that complain about our zoning ordinance, and I tell them, we're updating it. We're trying to respond to this kind of stuff, and they look at me and they're not even participating. So I would hope you were. But so that's my comments. I need to move on to the next item. I do have comments, or I do have comments regarding it. In regards to the west setback with the stairways encroaching into that, that is an appropriate improvement. There needs to be some exit and from the deck, and if it's not over here, it would be over here. There's not, there's with slope or some constraints, it doesn't make sense to move it in the front. So in regards to your request for the stairs to be in the west interior setback, that's an appropriate improvement. In regards to the solarium, if you were to come in today and request the modification to add the solarium, that is something that we generally support. And the reasons being is that it's extending an existing building line, again, recognizing the situation that you brought up regarding zone changes and the change in the setback. I don't have an answer for you why this was allowed to be encroaching into the setback. If it was the same reasoning that extends an existing line down, and I don't know if these are considered bay windows. Bay windows can encroach. But in regards to the solarium, building an addition, that's a supportable modification. It's appropriate improvement. It does encroach into the setback, but like I said, it represents an extension of these two lines. In regards to the deck, the finding is that the modification is necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. And when I look at that, is there any other location on the lot? Why does it have to be in this area? Could the deck not be proposed if the modification was not granted? And it could. There's a whole deck around this area. And what I could support is the deck, again, it's still within the setback, but it represents a uniform extension. So this part of the deck would need to be removed. And the reasoning behind that, again, is it's an extension of the deck line in that area. And so what the project, so the only thing that would need to be removed is this section that encroaches farther than that.
In addition to that, this is a set of 6-foot, 8-inch doors that slide open. Those would all have to be redone.
Okay.
So that's an additional cost.
Okay.
That has to go to a window because of the distance to the ground.
Okay.
So those all have to be torn out. So now you would, if you make that decision, it causes not only to have to tear this down, but also to do the railing here and to redo all of this window wall here.
Yeah, well, it's really unfortunate that the previous property owners did not get a building permit for it, because that would have been the outcome at the time that they came in. They would have not been granted this, it would have been designed different. And when the property owner bought the property, it was declared in the ZIR that it was a violation. So it was bought with that knowledge. I understand. You know the appeal process. You can appeal to the Planning Commission and make your case to them. All right, so I will be revising the findings to make it clear that this portion of the deck is not, was denied, that the portion of the setback, interior setback on the west that was approved was the enclosure of the solarium and the extension of the deck that represents a uniform extension of that wall. Like I said, my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days, and that appeal is actually filed here versus City Hall, so when you file, just come here. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions, and if they felt this warranted additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period, and if they called it up, Betsy would contact me.
Okay?
Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you.
The last item is 376 Glossatoris. And then I'll just give these back to you later. Thanks, Betsy. Do you have your plans?
Yes?
Oh.
Or you
No, you use my.
grab it.
No, okay. No,
Sorry, do you have the plans?
I do, but normally you outline like everything.
Oh, okay. Can you go grab them? I'll go
Are they outlined? If I have
Yeah,
plans.
the set's outlined.
No, it's okay. Anytime you're ready, Katie.
Okay. So the proposed project at 376 Los Alturas Road is coming before you for a request for an interior setback modification to allow the as-built exterior stairs to encroach in the interior setback and the Edison utility platform. The existing 2,678 square foot single-family residence on the 1.2 acre lot was destroyed in the T-fire. The applicant came before the Single-Family Design Board for a new project proposal for a rebuild for the 4,748 square foot single-family residence with a 523 square foot 2-car garage, pool, and spa. The project received design review final approval in August, and in September it returned to the SFDB for a review after final for several alterations, including the exterior stairs and the Edison utility platform. They received final approval for the review after final changes. It was subsequently determined that the interior setback modification was required to construct the exterior stairs and platform into the required interior setback. The owner is requesting the as-built additions to remain as constructed, and staff is in support of the interior setback modification as the proposed alterations are minor encroachments and they're necessary for the project and would not adversely impact any adjacent neighbors or the visual aesthetic from the street.
Great, thank you. I don't have any questions for you right now. Would you like to state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Paul Seacat, representing SHO Associates, and this is property owner Kevin Cravens.
Okay, great, thanks.
The utility platform is required to access the main panel, service panel for the residents, which is like right here. The stairs are also required to access the pool equipment down below, which is located right here. We feel that due to the minor nature of the encroachments that and the low visual impact, that this would be an appropriate for the property.
Okay. All right, great, thanks. Is there anybody here who'd like to address the staff hearing officer on 376 Los Altos Road? Okay, have we received any letters or emails?
No.
No? Okay, I'll close the public hearing. I did go out to the site and, walked down the stairs, looked at it, tried to get a feel for the relationship of the neighboring property. As you heard the discussion before, the interior setback modification request is more of how does it potentially affect the neighbor and the relationship between the two. In this instance, it is just stairways. There is a small area where you saved the tree. Little tree.
We have so few left.
I know, which was good. But it's not really an area to congregate, and for the most part, I think it's on grade. There might be some here. But, in terms of the access way, I understand you need to get down to below the area. I don't think there's any stairs in this area, but, just to access this area. So it is necessary, and there's not really any other areas given the slopes and the house that was just built to put those stairs. So your request, it is an appropriate improvement. It's not overkill. It's, just the bare
I get it.
not bare necessity, but it's just, the minimum required. So I can make the findings outlined in the staff report. Staff's not proposing any conditions, and I don't need to add any conditions to make the project more supportable. So I'll approve the project as submitted. And as you heard the other projects, my action is appealable to the Planning Commission within 10 calendar days. And they also have oversight authority of all my actions. And if they felt for some reason this required additional discussion before them, they could call it up during that same 10-day review period. And if either of those would occur, Katie would contact you.
Great.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's on schedule so much faster. We
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
I adjourn the meeting. I do have a couple things to talk to you about, Katie.